Thank you for tuning in to TalkWad.com, the world's fastest growing internet radio network. Please check out all the other great shows on www.talkwad.com.
Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in? Miracles, I guess, still happen now and then. Step into my heart.
Hello, this is Alvin Harmoning, Special Worldwide Agent A reporting live, and welcome to my world of Holistically Speaking. Today our guest is Lisa McClendon Sims. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Alvin.
And Lisa has had her, in her life, what I like to look at, and I don't know if she likes this or not, but I kind of call it her own version of Eat, Pray, Love. Now, can you give us a little, idea in that, or, I mean, do you like it being called that, or?
Well, you've asked me to be on the show because what I'm doing is kind of unusual, and right?
A little bit. I'm saying, what's unusual to one person may be
perfectly normal for me. Right. So, of course, the movie Eat, Pray, Love is fabulous, and in the end, she found really who she is, and that's, I think, the similarity that you're seeing is that I have kind of come back to myself. So it's been an evolution. Life is an amazing path, and we're such creative beings, and sometimes we create things that we don't want, and then we need to change who we are.
Yes, I found that myself. Now, do you sit back sometime? I know you don't spend a lot of time, but do you spend some time, every now and then and seeing like the different, choices you made in your life that got you here?
Absolutely. I see points. I sort of see life as a timeline, and then there are certain points on there that were deciding factors in your life of you wouldn't be where you are now if you hadn't made that choice.
Is there any time within that when you wonder, like, would it have gone, what if I made this choice, or what if it had gone this way, or?
I don't think you get this far in life without second guessing yourself sometimes and asking, if you made the best possible choice. But what I've learned is that I always do the very best I can with the information that I have at the time. It's sort of like Don Miguel Ruiz in the Four Agreements. Always do your best, and your best is better some days than it is others, and some years it's better than others. And so when you know better, you do better, and it's all a journey. It's all I think of it as an evolution for me, certainly.
Yeah, I've seen some changes, as we've talked about in my own story, in myself, even over this weekend, which we'll get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I'd like to, if you could go over, a kind of the story up to here, and kind of start at the beginning. But I mean, we don't need to go back to the womb, but you get the idea.
I could go back beyond that if you want. That'd be fun.
That'll be another show.
Okay, good. Well, as we discussed, my ancestry is all American. My maiden name is McClendon, which is, of course, Scottish. And my ancestry came here. It was 4 Scottish brothers that came to North Carolina in the 1740s. Of course, the further you go back in your ancestry, you got 5 billion grandparents. Mm-hmm. But that's the lineage that we follow because that's the name.
Now, the question before you get, is that someplace else you explored? Have you been to Scotland?
I have been to Scotland. I went to Edinburgh. I didn't explore it extensively, but I did live in Great Britain for 7 years. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been a very interesting circle. So my ancestors came into North Carolina. They settled in Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. And I followed my ancestry. My brother and my cousin have taken it back so far back. So something like the 2nd century is ridiculous, and it's all pretty much European. So my sister's about to get DNA testing to see if there's, anything in there that we don't know about. But I consider my ancestry to be straight European American. And my folks were from the South. My dad was raised in Tennessee and Alabama. My mom in South Carolina. And then my dad was in the military. So we were all military brats, me, my brother, and sister. And we were all born in different states because they move you every 4 years. But we moved to Tampa when I was 6. So we settled in Tampa, and then my father retired from the military when I was 11 because they got started a little late on the kids. So I grew up here in Tampa. I grew up in Town and Country, and that's where pretty much I'm from. So I have a brother and a sister. My sister's older than me, Denise, and my little brother lives in Brandon. His name is Dennis. And so I was born she was born in Texas. I was born in Ohio. My dad was at the Pentagon. He was a pilot in World War II, actually. And then he went into journalism, and he was a press writer for the generals in the military, and that's how we ended up here with the U.S. Readiness Command. So I grew up here and went to school here. And
what was that like for you? Middle school. I'm saying, were you moving around a lot, or did you?
No, we never moved once I was 6.
Oh,
So
okay.
we moved here, which is kind of cool because I have memories of Washington, D.C. when we lived there. And, it's kind of nice to make a change because I know it was pre-Tampa,
Right.
because you could see the Washington Monument from our house and that sort of thing. I always wanted to just grow up. I didn't really enjoy being a child as much as some people do. And my father traveled quite a bit. He was usually being sent to places where he couldn't take his family. He was being sent to places that were either pre-war or during a war. So we had to stay here. But I think part of my life was really shaped by that. I remember you were asking about, is there a point? And this is one of those points on that timeline of my life, which was, I think he was in Jordan or Ethiopia or somewhere like that. And I think I was about 8. And he sent me a postcard of a camel. And I'd never seen a camel before. And I remember holding that postcard and saying, I'm going to go there. I'm going there. I'm going to go see that camel.
Now, where was the postcard from?
Either Jordan or Ethiopia, somewhere, that they have camels.
Okay.
So it's kind of funny. I got the travel bug from my dad. My brother and sister never really got it that strong. But whenever my dad came back from a country, he always brought us some of the money, and he brought me and my sister each a doll from that country. And we always put them up on the wall, and I don't know, it always called me, and I wanted to go. So I spent my teenage years pretty much trying to get through that, figure out who I was, like every other teenager. And I think another deciding point was when I was 16 or 17. My dad was doing part of a TV program, and the producer for the program had a foreign exchange student staying with him from Finland. And I went to, some office party, I don't know, and I met her there by the pool. And we became really good friends. She, bless her heart, she was out in Riverview, which back then had one blinking light, there was nothing. So I was driving, and I could come rescue her and scoop her up for the weekend and bring her home and do some different stuff. And so the deciding factor was she invited me to Finland. Okay, you don't invite me someplace unless you want me to come, because if it's another place, I'm probably going to come. So then let's see. I had a friend that had gone to Europe the year before and wanted to go back, and he was an experienced traveler and I wasn't. So that was the next big thing. Was I was 18. This was going to be the trip of a lifetime. 3 weeks in Europe, and that's it. Then you come back and behave, right? No.
I don't know. I'm still not behaving.
Neither am I. So, uh, we, he and I traveled for 3 weeks through England, Scotland, Wales, and northern France to Paris. And then he came back to the States, and I went to Finland for a month, and I stayed with my friend Sherpa there. And I thought that was going to be it. You know, I'd put my my airline ticket on one of those 6-month American Express payment plans. So I came back. I got a job in international banking, registered for HCC, to go to school, and I loved international banking. I thought it was so much fun because I loved the foreign money, and we had telex machines back then, and I just Tampa wasn't doing it for me. I'd already done everything I could do here. It was a different place back then. There was much less to do. And I was getting into a fair bit of mischief trying to entertain myself, And we won't go into the details on that. Not now, anyway. And
Another show, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe so. And so I thought, okay, how am I going to get back there? London. I loved London. It was everything Tampa wasn't.
So when you say that, though, what was it? I mean, what was it? What did it seem like it was to you? What was that pull?
It was very international, very cosmopolitan. In Tampa at the time, I think I'd been to every restaurant that Tampa had. There was a couple Chinese places, and there may be brewmasters for steak and ale or something. But it had an underground system. You didn't have to drive. It had foreign films. It had cafes. It had subcultures, which I've always been very interested in different cultures. And at the time, I was very interested. I mean, to me, that was the subcultures of an urban place are every bit as interesting to me as other cultures. So I got to learn really about the world, much of the world, while I was living in London. I didn't meet that many English people,
right?
In London, they were mostly foreigners around where I was. So anyway, I went back when I was 19. I thought, okay, we're gonna, you try to do this the straight and narrow way, go to school or have a job or something like that. And I realized I already had a year of college here, and it wasn't going to translate over. I would lose it. And so I said, you know what the heck? I'm just going to move back in with my folks. I was living on Davis Island at the time. When I was 19, I moved back in with my folks and saved money for a year. And I worked at the bank. And so when I was 19, I went back to just England and Spain. That was a really difficult trip. I was by myself, and I was 19, and I only had that little bit of experience. So I had all kinds of interesting experiences.
You said you went to Spain. I haven't been there myself, but my brother took a trip there. I've heard that's one of the cleanest places over there. Was that your experience?
I don't know. I wasn't really looking for clean, that wasn't really my focus. I was looking for history, and castles and knights and.
So you're looking for the not so clean. I'm saying the little.
Yeah, I went
spicks.
to where the gypsies live,
Okay.
and go to see the flamenco and things like that. I mean, Northern Europe has the reputation for being really clean, and maybe Spain is, and maybe that just isn't a high priority on my list.
For some reason, there's a film actress coming to mind who I don't know why. It's just listening to you talking and going through the story. All of a sudden, it just comes to mind, and I'm thinking maybe it has some relation. She is famous for the line, "Why don't you come up and see me sometime?"
Oh, that's Mae West.
Yes, for some
and we'll
reason.
take that as a great compliment. Thank you.
I'm saying, was that something when you were younger? I'm saying studying films and different things that you, looked at her films and stuff like that a little bit?
I watched Mae West. I was always, again, just intrigued by the foreign. I loved foreign films. I've always had kind of a problem with American films. I find them very predictable. And I found at the time back then European films particularly to be more real. I like real, I was fascinated
Well,
by
remembering Way
humanity.
West, she wasn't that predictable.
That's true. Not for the 1920s when she was around, I think it was. Yeah. So, so anyway, when I was 20, I went to the flea market. I sold everything, and I moved to London.
Hmm.
I had finished my 2-year degree then, and I had through that program gotten a 6-month work permit. So I
Hmm.
said, okay, that's it. I've got to stay for at least 6 months. I'd saved $2,000, which was a lot of money back then, and I'll stay until I run out of money. So I moved to London. I moved into the Kensington, Chelsea area, which in the 70s was where the punk rock thing was starting to happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What bands did you follow?
Well, I got introduced because I worked on the King's Road, which is a very trendy, or it used to be, I'm not sure if it still is, very trending place, and where all the punk rockers were. And I got to, all the famous people came in and shopped. It was called retro antique clothing. It was 1940s retro American clothing that we sold. And I got this fabulous collection of 1940s padded shoulders and beaded and furs, and hats and all this sort of thing.
So, who were some of the people that you got to meet?
Oh, without a doubt, my favorite was Patti Smith.
Patti Smith.
Patti Smith. She was one of the original punk rock and rollers. She's an American, and she's still around. She's a poet. And I got to meet Julie Christie and Rod Stewart and just different people that would come in the shop and shopping. And The Shining was filmed during that time while I was there.
Oh, okay.
And I can't remember that actress's name, but she and the costume people were in there looking for American clothes because they were filming it actually in London.
Okay, with The Shining, I'm going to ask you, did he come in?
Oh, no, he didn't. No. No, he sure didn't. I think he's like you. He just shows up. And so I loved London. I loved it. I loved living there. It was fabulous. And then I've always had really good guidance and good intuition. I'd been there for about a year, and all of a sudden one day, it was time to go. It was like, okay, now I'm going, and I'm going to go travel.
Now, was there a significant event that happened that I'm saying that kind of led you to that, or?
It was probably, as usual, a series of things that come together, but I've always been good at listening.
Was there dating somebody at that time?
Yeah,
Or?
men or, yeah, of course. And who knows? Maybe I'd gotten fed up with my job. I don't know. But then I said,
But
it's time
I'm
to
saying
go.
there was no serious guy at that time or anything? Or?
Well, I wasn't serious about relationships then. I was serious about living my life. So, yeah, I did have a relationship, and I had someone else that was living with me, but neither one were really committed relationships. And things were different back then. I now everybody's really, focused on that sort of thing. But
Well, not everybody, but
but I know my children are like, Mom, that's bad. You're dating two different guys. I'm like, that if it's agreeable, if that was the agreement, then that's what the agreement is. And I really didn't want to be tied down by anybody.
Right.
So,
well, at least not in that manner of speaking.
yeah, that's Alvin, you rascal. So, so then I decided it was time to travel, and my money lasted me about 5 months. I ran out of money in 5 months. I spent 2 months of that in Salamanca, Spain. I took 5 hours a day of intensive Spanish language classes, living with Spanish families, traveling around Spain, going on field trips. Then I went to Portugal for a week, down to Morocco. That was kind of a shorter stay than I intended because single women traveling in Arabic countries in the 70s was not really my best idea.
I have no idea what
But I
that's
was
like.
fearless,
Yeah.
I had such a supportive family.
Right.
It was so wonderful. I remember coming home and saying to my dad, "What should I do? Do you think I should go?" And he said, "You'll never be happy until you do, Lisa. Go." It was, can you imagine saying that to your 19-year-old? It was fabulous. So supportive.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's viewers that we have that, may not be able to imagine that.
Mhm.
But, at the same time, where they are now, they're like, possibly they wish they would have gone.
Yeah. Many
And,
people have said that to me. Yeah. So then let's see. You meet people along the way when you're traveling alone. Sort of palled up with someone for 2 or 3 weeks, and she and we met in Coimbra, Portugal, and we went down to Morocco, back up through Seville, France, down into Rome, and then she had to go back home. She lived in Seattle.
I'm just gonna guess, you being you, that there's a couple guys in Morocco along the way that got a swift kick in the.
I could tell you a story, but I'm not going to go there. Yeah.
Okay, so I was right.
Yeah. But it's pretty dangerous. I mean, it was
Yeah.
back then, you could go get sold into white slavery and you
Right.
could just disappear off the map. And yeah, it was, I was planning to spend a couple of weeks because I'd met people that really loved it,
Mhm.
but a couple days and I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. This is scary. So anyway, Marilyn went back to Seattle and Rome, and I went on down to Brindisi and took a
Wait,
ferry.
Seattle and Rome?
She from Rome back to Seattle, where she lived,
Oh, okay.
and I think still lives. And I went over to Greece, and that
Mhm.
was I remember I spent Thanksgiving in Rome, and then I went to Greece. So I spent December and January, which are normally the months that nobody would want to go to Greece because the weather's lousy. But it was perfect for me because there were no tourists, and I got the Greeks. I got to meet the Greek people. I got to go into their homes, spend Christmas with them. It was just what I wanted. I mean, it was very lonely. I'm not going to say Christmas by yourself, and that was the second year in a row I'd had Christmas by myself. But I ran out of money. I was running out of money. I said, when I get down to 500, I'm going to leave. So I was on a ferry back from Patras, the port for Athens, to Italy, and I think it was 2 days, and I had met these three truckers
Mhm.
in a truck while waiting for the ferry because I could see they spoke English, and I couldn't afford to eat on the boat, So I went to them and said, "Excuse me, can you tell me where I can pick up some bread and oranges and figs and whatnot?" So they told me. Anyway, since I had approached them, they kept asking me to come eat with them on the boat. And they were lovely men. They were family guys and they were truckers. And they had just taken a load of like 14 tons of Carrara marble, the marble that Michelangelo used, into the Middle East, and were coming back.
I'm betting that was expensive.
I bet it was, and heavy. Anyway, so they kept inviting me, and I kept turning them down. I couldn't afford to eat in the restaurant. I'd just carry a loaf of bread and a bag of oranges and figs or whatnot, and just when I was hungry, I'd eat. Anyway, about the third time, they said, "Lisa, we're starting to take this personally, that you won't come with us." I said, "Oh, please don't do that. It's lovely of you to, but I really can't afford to." So now you're coming with us, So they adopted me. And so I spent the rest of it, and they were lovely, married men with families and everything. Anyway, we get to Italy, and one of them says, "I know you're going to Rome." Actually, I was planning to go to Venice, but he said, "And I know you'll be going back to Florence," it was. And I'm driving to Florence. If you want to come with me, it's a free trip. So anyway, I went with this trucker, from the port in Italy to Florence. He said, "I know you're perfectly capable of traveling around the world by yourself, but I'm going to, I would really make me feel better if I saw you get into a hotel safely." I'm like, "No, okay, fine, please yourself." So I was staying in a little pension there, and he had to wait 3 days for his orders of what it was he was supposed to pick up next. And in the meantime, I said, "Well, I'm going to the museums if you want to come with me." So he's like, he was a trucker. He didn't normally go to the museums. He said, "Well, I'll do that." So go ahead.
I'm just kind of wondering. I'm saying, do you know truckers here,
Mm-mm.
or thing? I'm saying to get a reference from, I'm saying from that job there and the life they led there to, say here that that the life that a trucker would lead.
Well, I think it's different because
Mhm.
in Europe at the time, you had to go through borders all the time. I mean, now it's the European community and you don't have to. But every country is different and everyone speaks a different language, so they can't cover the distance. And then we also had to drive through the Alps, through Mont Blanc, through the longest tunnel in the world. And anyways, I just was going on my intuition. And when you travel alone, you have to and I've got seriously wonderful angels. You know, they've gotten me out of all kinds
I'm
of.
hearing Janis Joplin in the back of my mind. Bobby McGee.
Yeah, yeah. I love Janis Joplin. She was just fabulous. So anyway, in the end, he got 3 days. He got his orders. He was supposed to go back to London. He said, "I'm going to London. If you want to drive with me, we can drive through the Alps." So there we are in 6 feet of snow in February, driving. 'Cause we had quadraphonic speakers back then, you know, and listening to Frank Zappa singing through the Alps in the snow. And drove back to London. He was very gentlemanly. He was lovely. Dropped me off in London. Never saw him again. You know, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite an adventure. So that's who I really am, and that was really, really nice.
And part of that's still you today.
It is very much so.
That free soul, that free spirit. It's just you've found a centered place for you to be that free spirit.
And I had the support, you know, and serious angels too. You know,
Right.
Seriously. I mean, I know I apologize sometimes. I say I'm sorry I made it so hard for you guys. They're like, "Can we just take a break for a while?"
Yeah,
You know?
you're keeping them busy.
Yeah. So
that was part one. You'd say.
I had a little bit more of part one. I had a few
Okay.
more years of that. That was life number one. I came home, regrouped. I had asked people along the way, "You know me, where have you been that you think I would like?" And everybody kept saying San Francisco. So I said, "Okay, I'll move to San Francisco." Moved back in with my folks for 2 or 3 months, saved a few more pennies, and I shipped everything out to San Francisco. And I loved San Francisco too. I just loved it. It was fantastic. It's such a beautiful place. It's the one place in this country that I would move back to. That area. Are you familiar with San Francisco?
No, but I am going to be taking a trip out there. Somebody has invited me out, and I'm looking forward to it.
It's a beautiful place. So I lived in San Francisco for 4 years. I got recruited by a recruiting agency while I was there, and to do recruiting, headhunting.
Oh,
Yeah, out there. And so I started doing that. Within 6 months, I was the assistant manager, and within 1 year, I was managing the San Francisco office with 10 people.
for what field?
It was specialized administrative support, and it was a national company based in Dallas. And Joe Curtin, who is still a very dear friend of mine, was my boss there, and she taught me everything I knew about sales. You know, she always said to me, I'd say, "Oh, you know, I don't know about sales," and she'd say, "Lisa, you're a dyed-in-the-wool salesperson. For heaven's sake, I am." I didn't know that. So she taught me everything I knew. But after a few years, I decided that was it. I was too young to be doing that, and it was way too stressful. I wasn't sleeping at night, and I wasn't having fun anymore. So I came back to Tampa for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to go back to Europe. I was just doing temp jobs in between, and I highly recommend temping. I think it's the best thing in the world. I have gotten a couple of my career changes by finding out about things through temp jobs that I just didn't even know existed. And I was actually temping at AAA, and I went up to the travel agency, and I saw this 17-day overland trip to the USSR back then, from London. And I thought, I'm going to go on that trip. I still had a man sort of in my heart, you know, still in London, and I kind of needed to shake that one loose and get some closure on it. So I went back to London, shook it loose. That was just the right thing to do. And then I went down to Salamanca, Spain again for another month of Spanish classes. And then I went back up to London and went on this 17-day overland in a bus for 17 days with this group. It went through Holland, Belgium, back then East Germany and West Germany both, and then through Poland, up into Russia, through Minsk and Leningrad.
So where haven't you been yet?
Oh, there's still, yeah. I haven't been to Australia yet, or India.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and I met my future husband on that trip, and came back, moved back out to San Francisco for a year. Became a travel agent because by then it was like the obvious thing to do. And then I came back to Tampa. Another year later, my mother got cancer, and I just like I got to be back there with her. There's no doubt about it. And I was ready for a change. I was a little bit fed up with the city, and so I moved back to Tampa. My mother overcame her cancer, and then I decided to we decided to go ahead and get married, I should say. So that was life number one. Okay, and that
I wouldn't be surprised if you said you decided it had happened.
well, I think he says I bullied him. Yeah, he does. He needed some deadlines, shall we say. Well, it had been like, 3 or 4 years since we'd met, and it was like, okay, we're either going to do this or we're not. I was almost 30. So, so then I got married, and I moved to Oxford, England. He's English, and settled down, had a couple babies, lived in England. It was beautiful. Oxford, Cotswolds, beautiful green rolling hills. So I keep doing this sort of circle between England and the U.S. And it's actually told my last life was in England as well, and in the southeastern part of the U.S., which wouldn't surprise me. And so the next part is fairly predictable. The next 20 years I spent raising children. And I got to say, I've done a lot of things in my life, and people sometimes say, Lisa, you're courageous, the things that you've done. But I never really embraced that because I think to have courage, you have to have fear. And I was pretty fearless, so not really courageous. But turning into a mother changed that. And I found mothering the hardest job I've ever done, really. Harder than traveling the world, harder than being a recruiting or travel agent or anything. I found that pretty tough. And so, kind of cut a long 10-year story short, we lived in England for 5 years. Then we moved here to the States. We moved back here because the economy changed there, and it just was sort of the sensible thing to do. And we'd agreed to do that at some point anyway. And we moved back to Charleston. We lived in Charleston for a couple of years. Moved up to Cincinnati. That didn't go very well at all. And then we moved back down. We lived in Brandon for a couple of years, back in my home, where I understood how the people thought. And, I was selling new homes for a living by then. I'd shifted over into real estate, into new home sales. Another one of those temp job things. And and I found out how much money they were making at the time. I am like all over that. I was not making money as a travel agent. I was just sort of driving along hoping my car wouldn't break down and stopping at my parents' for dinner because travel agents don't make a lot of money. So I got into new home sales. I did that for 14 years. I did it in England as well. And Charleston and Cincinnati, back to Brandon. And I did that for a while here. Then life started taking another change. What had happened, and I think that this is maybe something that a lot of your listeners can resonate with. I kind of got lost. As strong as a person as I am, and even though I had had this life until I was almost 30, I lost myself. And I thought, I can do this. I've been successful at everything I've done before. I can be a mom and a wife, and I can just be low man on the totem pole here. And
You lost Lisa.
I lost Lisa. I completely lost her. And
the roles being confused with, am I a mother? Am I a wife? Or where's Lisa at?
Right. And I was still working at the time, and I was making really good money. And that was kind of, the whole money thing. You sort of end up living for the money. And I thought, I'm going to die of cancer like my mother had gotten cancer. And I'm not going to do that anymore. So let's see. I can't remember the exact order of events. Okay, so my marriage wasn't going so well either, and I had teenagers, and it was really very, very, very difficult for me. Um, I was having panic attacks, anxiety attacks. I was taking SSRIs
What's
and
that?
the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That's like Prozac and things like that. To try
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
to try to cope. And then my marriage ended,
Hmm.
and my actually I call him my husband now. he
I
was,
was,
he
man.
was my husband, and now he's not. And we're still good friends, and we wanted to. We were both very disappointed that the marriage couldn't last, but it just couldn't. And so we sold the big house and we bought two little houses in Northdale, and we
Hmm.
co-parented the children from there. Okay, so that's when this is I was moving into life number 3.
Okay.
So this is the beginning of kind of my path of I had to do all that to get to this point.
Hmm.
But a series of events happened, um, and this was actually before my marriage split up. Was my father died, and my mother had died in actually the year my daughter was born in 1989, and um, at the memorial service was a dear friend who I was very traumatized by his death, and
Hmm.
on top of everything else. And she said, you need to go see my friend. She reads angel cards, and she's at Harmony Metaphysical Church. Her name's Donna
Oh,
Jean
really?
Kera. Yeah. And that was in 2002. It was February of 2002. And so I went to, and I'd been taking my kids to like Unity. I'd been on a spiritual path.
Searching.
Yeah, in my 20s, but then when I became a mother, that was it. I'm mom, and I was also a provider for the family, and I didn't really have, you know, focus. I'm always launching into something, and
And you'd say like you were uh it was like something you connected to before, like a force that I'm saying that after going through the thing, it was something. It was a different need at that time, for where you were.
uh, uh, I think it started when my mother died. I think I gave birth, and then my mother died, my first child, and my
Hmm.
mother died like 6 months apart. And my mother was really my best friend in the world, and it would just left this gaping hole. I just felt a hole in me. And I was part of something called the Oxford Complementary Medicine Group in Oxford at the time, which
Hmm.
was alternative medicines. And I used that to heal my physical body, but I just still felt a loss. She was so important to me. And I just kept trying to fill that. Um, so I'd been going to Unity. I'd been trying to give my children some spiritual concepts as well. Organized religion never really worked for me. And
Yeah, I know the feeling.
my parents always encouraged me, go to synagogues, go to churches, go do everything,
Yeah.
and in my travels, I'd gone and seen some crazy stuff, man. I'd, um, uh, every chance I got, anytime I had money, that's what I'd do is go travel. Went to Brazil and Venezuela. I went to the Candomblé, which is like the Brazilian Santeria down there.
So you're saying you were kind of still searching, like in your 20s and your thing. You were checking out different. I'm saying beliefs and spiritual things at
Hmm.
that time, and it's like you were still searching for something then, but then life happened.
Yeah, exactly. Big time.
And then so you went through the marriage, and basically you came to a time when, well, it's time to finish the search. It's time to find what that is.
My spirit was screaming. It was screaming.
Mm.
This was so interesting to me. And this is where I think we move into the sort of eat, pray, love thing. Um, like I said, I kind
Well, a
of
lot
lost.
of it sounds like Eat, Pray, Love so far,
Yeah.
and I'm saying in your own life, versus the life of the lady in that, you started yours a lot earlier than
Yeah.
she did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so at the memorial service for my
Hmm.
father's funeral, a dear friend came and she said, you need to go visit my friend. And I did. And that
Hmm.
just launched off this whole thing. I went to Harmony. It's over on West Henry here in Tampa, near Armenia and Hillsborough.
Yes, I've been there. That's actually where we met.
It is indeed, yeah. And I felt like I'm home. This is it, man. I am home. And everything just started happening. That was 2002. And I love Donna Jean. I love the services. I met Pepito Valdez, who is my facilitator for Course in Miracles. And it's a little strange because I've never really even read the Bible. And the Course in Miracles has a lot of biblical language in it, though. Yeah, well,
Yes,
you
it
know a
does.
lot about it.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
um,
that's where we met is Course in Miracles meetings at Harmony Metaphysical Church.
and I can't believe that even worked for me. But it did. I took it. I was going 3 times a week to different groups, and including Pepito's Thursday night group, which is still going on there. And it just gave me the strength that I needed to get out of the hole that I dug.
Now, did you get into the Dr. Michael Rice stuff as well?
I did.
Yeah,
I
I'm
did.
saying the combination of that, for me, my own story, it was a combination of, working through the 12 steps, Course in Miracles, and the stuff through Aramaic forgiveness.
And a lot of it's I've learned because I'm very interested in esoteric teachings,
Hmm.
the hidden teachings, that it it's really very simple. It all comes back kind of to the same thing. And then what human beings do is they take that pure truth and they build around it and make it complex. And if you follow them all back, like the Christian mystics, the Jewish, the Kabbalah, and you go back, a lot of it goes back to just the very simple, basic truths.
Yes, it
And
does.
and that's what I eventually learned. And the Course in Miracles, in my opinion, is kind of a very convoluted way to get there.
Hmm.
But sometimes life is convoluted to get you to the mess that you got into, and you need to you need a convoluted path
Hmm.
to get back. I mean, some people are able to just read the Tao Te Ching, and get it from that. But there are those of us that need a little bit. My mother used to say, Lisa, why do you always do everything the hard way? Like it's just who I am. So, I spent a few years doing that and recovering, finding myself again,
Hmm.
and I was so grateful for that. And then I'd been going to Harmony for maybe 2 or 3 years when Reverend Nellie Rivera, she was a minister in training there, had a group to Peru. She just had this little flyer. And again, it was one of those hits for me. I saw that flyer. Peru wasn't even on my radar. At the time that I was traveling, South America wasn't really the kind of the place to be. There was a lot of terrorism and whatnot. Um, but I saw that flyer and I thought, I am on that trip. As long as Nellie's going, I am going to Peru with her.
Hmm.
So again, it was going to be another one of those trip of a lifetime things. I had to take a home equity mortgage, loan out on my house to go. But I went on an 11-day trip with her down there, and Peru just claimed me. It just, it just claimed me. And sometimes I'm a little slow on hearing those things. I got plans to do. I got kids in school. I got things to do and
But the
whatnot.
Puma grasped you.
The Puma got me. Yeah, big time. Yeah, and so this was I think, another pivotal point for me. I came back. I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to simplify my life. I had still quite a high mortgage because prices were really high at the time. And I said, I'm going to sell this home. I've been in relocation then for 7 years, and I
Hmm.
wasn't having fun. The market had gotten all weird, and I didn't like the changes that were happening. And this was 7 years ago, if you want a point in time there.
Right.
And uh, so I'm going to sell my house and change my career. So I come back and I can manifest things like that normally. Things just happen for me. And nothing would happen. Nothing would work. Couldn't sell my house. Couldn't get an interview. And I meditate every day. And I have been since I started with Harmony.
Right.
Thank God it's just saved my life. And so I sat down. I said, okay, what's going on here? Usually this is a pretty big sign, and I don't need the cosmic 2x4, thank you. I'm listening,
Yeah, I've needed a few of those myself. There's something I want to ask you before we go any further. We're getting along in this, and I personally think a lot of the viewers, especially women, will hear your story. How much longer are you going to be in Tampa?
I'm only going to be here for less than a week, and I won't even really be here most of that time. I'm in Sarasota 2 days, and I'm in West Palm Beach 2 days.
Okay, so what you're heading
So,
back by when?
so I'll be here until Thursday.
Oh, until this coming Thursday?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's Thursday. I need to go. So anyway, what happened next was in my meditation, I got, Lisa, you're doing the right thing. You're doing all the right things, but you're doing it for the wrong reason. What? What? Because, I got my kids, one in middle school, one in high school. And then the message came to me, what is in your heart? And, well, that was a no-brainer because Peru was calling me back. And so the messages go back to Peru. I said, well, that's just bloody inconvenient. I just got I just came back from Peru in November, and this was, I think, January. And I had to take out a loan to do it, and I got 2 kids, and the message was, try it. All right, I'll try it. So I put my house on Craigslist for $2,000 a month to rent it out. Someone sent me, I got one response. They sent me a check for $6,000 to rent my house for 3 months. Someone said, I'll take this kid. Someone said, I'll take that kid. And I said, I think I'm going to Peru again. This is really very strange. So I went back and I spent 3 months. My plan was to move back there permanently. But it didn't end up happening that way. I decided my son would love it. My daughter would hate it. She's a little bit of a princess. Third world isn't really her cup of tea. So I came back and I said, that's okay. I can wait a few years. I've waited this long. We can get these kids launched off. I kept ending up going back to Peru in the interim. People would say, we want to go to Peru, take us. Or I got a meditation one time, go back to Peru and take my son. So I did. And then I waited until about 2.5 years ago when my kids were launched, and I moved to Peru. And I live in Cusco, Peru now.
And I want to go ahead and take the time that you do tours yourself now.
I do. Mm-hmm.
And how can people contact you about that? And I'd like our producer to go ahead and get the video of Peru ready, so we can share a little bit about that city. And when we come back, I want to make sure people get the information on how to contact you if they're interested in doing one of these tours.
Okay, probably the best way is by email since people don't usually want to call Peru. And my email address is Lisa Sims. My name.
I believe the video is coming up right now.
Oh, okay. We'll wait.
A walk in the Puma city of Cusco. The historic city of Cusco is in Peru. Situated 3,400 meters above sea level in the Andes Mountains, it was the capital of the Inca Empire before the Spanish conquest. The Baroque cathedral in this square is one of the main gathering points. The Spaniards invaded the city in the early 16th century and destroyed all Incan palaces and temples. This altar is covered in gold used from Incan monuments. The Inca people worshipped nature. Condors, pumas, and snakes were guardian gods. The city has a puma shape. This part is the head, and the heart is the central square. Remnants of the Inca Empire have been found. Some stone walls still stand. This is Santo Domingo Convent. There used to be a temple dedicated to the sun here during the Inca period. It was regarded as the most sacred site in the city. These neatly arranged walls were decorated in gold. The glow represented sunshine. The Spaniards took the golden statues of the sun and removed golden leaf from the walls, but left the stone structure and built the church on top. This courtyard dates back to colonial times, but the water comes from a channel from the Inca period.
Es agua cristalina.
This sacred hill is the head of the puma-shaped city. There are also stone walls here. The site is known as the Sacsayhuaman. It is believed to have had a religious purpose. The Inca army barricaded themselves inside during the war against the Spaniards. At Cuzco, the mystery of a long-lost ancient civilization remains in the air.
Thank you, and welcome back. Hope everybody enjoyed that video. And so that's where you live now.
That's my Cusco. Yeah, it's a fabulous place. It's at 11,000 feet above sea level, way up in the mountains.
Yeah, I was actually doing some research, early before the show, looking at different videos and various things and hotels and even the nightlife there, which seems to be very interesting.
It's wonderful. I feel like I'm 20 again. It's fabulous. I mean, somebody actually said to me a couple of weeks ago, Lisa, you look younger than you did 8 years ago. And I said, it's because I'm happy. I mean, it makes all the difference in the world. I love it there.
And I'm learning myself and, through my own journey that's the most important thing in life.
It is.
I haven't met them in person yet, but I met somebody, online, and I'm going to be visiting them, and we're going to be going to San Francisco.
Fabulous.
They live in California, in Antioch.
Mm.
And but one of the places we're definitely wanting to go is San Francisco. And I've I just turned 40 myself, and a lot of people I can see. I don't know if you've gotten this about the whole thing, like the midlife crisis.
I did that already.
That's what I'm thinking myself. The crisis is over.
Uh-huh.
Now I'm starting to learn how to live.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Is that what you found?
Absolutely. Marianne Williamson said something very interesting, which I thought was just so. Was it her? She's talked about it, but I read a book by James Hollis called "The Middle Years: The Second Adulthood," and they say that we've added 20 years to our lifespan,
Right.
and you always think that's added on the end, but they said no, it was added in the middle. We're middle-aged for 20 years longer. We're healthier. We're able. I've raised my kids. I've done everything that they told me to do. I went forth and multiplied. I had successful careers. I've done all that. And then once you do all that, it's like nobody cares what you do anymore. No one's paying attention. You can do whatever you want. And it's absolutely liberating.
Well, I'm actually just starting to do that also.
Yeah. Well, you're not really into middle age yet.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is my world now is Peru, and I went there for spiritual reasons. I've been on just the most incredible path. My life is just magnificent. It's phenomenal the way that it's unfolded, and I'm happy to share all that with you too. And so much has happened in the past couple of years that I could talk about it forever.
Yes, I was talking to Lisa during the little break we had while the video was on. We're just now getting into Peru, and we got maybe about 4 minutes left. So what I've done is I've asked Lisa to come back next week for part 2.
Yay!
And this is the first time for my show to have that, and I'm honored to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. I will really look forward to sharing this because this is what I do now.
Yes.
I have been working with many different shamans, and I've received many initiations myself. And I do all kinds of ceremonies. I can put people in touch. I bring groups, not only spiritual though. I've got a group of bird watchers coming in a couple of months. If they just want the tourist thing, we can do that. We do adventure tours as well. Whatever it is people want.
Okay, as I see, we're at about 2 minutes. What I'd like to do is Mark Crosby, who was our last guest. I hope you're happy now. We have it's better because we had styrofoam last week.
Cheers.
So now we've got recyclable bottles. I also want to say that Holistically Speaking is brought to you by Talkwad Network. Please check out other shows with the Talkwad Network at www.talkwad.com. And you can check us out next week as Lisa, our lovely guest, is going to be back next week. I also want to promote the show I'm going to be working on putting together in the Bay Area, Comedy for the Cure, with Damian Seaman. Yes, that's his actual name. You can check him out on Facebook. And you can check Lisa's page out on Facebook as well.
Mm-hmm. Lisa McClendon Sims.
Yes, have you seen the name on the screen? And something else that's special to me that I've started to work with in the Bay Area is the Showcase Arts Foundation, which is for people, if they don't have the means to, that they can, be introduced to the arts and they can act and they can sing and, learn that when you really don't have access to the funds.
Oh, that's interesting.
And is there anything else you'd like to say to our loving viewers out there?
Oh, thank you for listening. I hope it was interesting. And I'll really look forward to sharing next week. I'd just like to point out these cloths because I'm not sure if I'll still have them next week because I have to mail them off. They're woven by the Caro of Peru. And
can you tell us a bit about, as we're heading out here, can you
Sure.
tell us about the different...
These are portable altar cloths. I'll talk more about the Caro, but they use a lot of symbology. And this is the sun with the rays emanating out from the sun. And then, let's see, this is the setting sun over here where you can see it going down. And then the diamonds are the lakes. This is the Inca Trail.
I believe we're heading out. We've got about, 15 seconds?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. And please tune in next week when our guest will be returning for part 2 of Eat, Love, Pray.
Thank you, Alvin.
With Lisa McClendon Sims. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.
Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in?